Shabbat Shalom. I'm Robert Barr, and
I'm Aya Pillsbury.
And we're delighted you're here for this Shabbat service. We're here live today at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We're going to read a bit of our service and then talk a little bit about ourjewishcommunity.org, and then we're going to have a conversation about April Fools, and that's no April Fool's joke. Start.
6 days we speak. Tonight we listen. 6 days we build. Tonight we rest. 6 days we take care of others. Tonight we nurture ourselves. 6 days we work to change our world. Tonight we are renewed by what is eternal. 6 days we plan for the future. Tonight we are enveloped by the present. 6 days we eat and drink in haste.
Tonight we savor the taste of bread, wine, and feel the bond of the world that feeds us. 6 days we teach, tonight we learn. 6 days we hear the clamor, tonight we listen for clarity. 6 days we struggle to expand our influence. Tonight we're dissolved in a greater influence. 6 days we focus our vision on the task at hand. Tonight we look beyond what we can see. May each of us find our Sabbath peace. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So we are here at ourjewishcommunity.org, which is based in Congregation Beth Adam in Loveland, Ohio. Beth Adam is preparing, we're actually having getting ready to celebrate our 36th year next year. Congregation was founded in 1980. And yes, I am the founding rabbi. I've been here since the very beginning. And this congregation really has taken Judaism seriously. We really take the language of Judaism seriously. We say here what we say matters. We should mean what we say and say what we mean. That's our mantra. We should say what we mean and mean what we say, because what we say matters. Language is a lens through which we see and understand the world. And like we wouldn't use a map from the 1700s or 1600s or the Iron Age, as we were talking right before services, nor should we use the language of those ages, because they saw and understood the world differently. So it's incumbent upon us to recreate a Judaism that's bold, modern, that reflects what we understand and how we see the world. So we've been involved in this process, really engaged in this process of writing and publishing literature since 1980. It's about a Judaism that recognizes the changing diversity of the Jewish community as well. We are not the same people we were even 30 years ago. Interfaith marriage, gay, lesbian relationships are reshaping the nature of the Jewish world. And as a congregation, we've always wanted to be on the forefront of that, respecting people, embracing people, recognizing that how we create a congregation, how we create membership, how we educate our children is all tied to all these the social change that we're part and parcel to. So that's what Beth Adam's been about. So about 9 years ago, really, we started talking about how the internet's changing the Jewish world as well.
Yeah.
And I was able to say to the board, we need to do something about that. We need to be able to speak to our kids who are no longer in Cincinnati, our kids who are now adults, and really create a community. And then we recognized, too, we had the opportunity then to talk to people who had never walked into the building before, but like this kind of voice. So that's what you're participating in. Some of you are here right now chatting. Sam's watching the chats. Others of you will watch these services in archives, and whatever you do, you're part of this remarkable community. So we're delighted you are here. And you can always write us at rabbi@ourjewishcommunity.org and be a part of this remarkable place that we're so proud to be the rabbis of. So we're going to continue with our candle lighting. Somehow we... Yeah. Did you put the services? Oh, there it is. It's Aya's fault.
Definitely.
It was your fault. Okay. On Shabbat, we light the candles. Candles bring forth light, illuminating the darkness. Candles offer warmth, providing comfort. Candle awakens us as we reach for possibilities. As we light these candles, let us use this light to stretch beyond ourselves, touching others, bettering our world. You want to do the Hebrew?
Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or ba'Shabbat, blessed is the light of the Sabbath.
Thanks. So we're going to talk about April Fools. Did you hear that Taco Bell bought the Liberty Bell and they're going to call it the Liberty Taco Bell?
I did not hear that today, but I don't know if I should trust it.
No, that was in 1996. That was I came, and that Expedia offered trips to Mars for $99.
I think that's a good deal.
I would have liked that. Let's see.
Have you ever been pranked out for an April Fool's?
I don't know. Have you? I tried to.
I feel like it's really hard to come up with something that's funny and not mean.
I had a friend who had one.
Like, it's really difficult.
Yeah. I mean, it was more about her. It was always she would always say something about herself, and you go, really? And she go, no, it's just April Fool. She did that every year. But I've never, because I was reading about people who like take out the Oreo center for their kids' cookies and they put in like toothpaste.
Oh, have a mint.
It wouldn't be cruel.
No, but it's silly and fun.
Silly. But I've never really had. I don't really. That's a great question. I wish I had thought about that like earlier in the day. But I don't. Occasionally, I guess silly little things where people say something. Really, and news reports and things like that. That was actually one that actually was on NPR today. They were telling a news report, and they said this really, and it sounded silly, and they said this is not an April Fool's. This is actually true. So. It's April 1st. If you're watching on live or soon in archives, it's April 1st. And unless you're in, I guess, Australia, it's no longer April 1st. But here it's April 1st, so it's April Fool's Day. So I wanted to talk about it because I thought it was sort of curious to me because you had done all this work on Purim, and you'd written a lot about. We did our Purim celebration. About
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, you dressed up as who?
As Vashti the Vividor, a combination of Queen Vashti, who refuses to dance naked in front of the king and his guests, and Rosie the Riveter.
How did you come up with that?
I have a Rosie the Riveter poster in my house that says "You can do it." I've had it since the beginning of rabbinic school.
Oh, really?
And it's right outside my door, so
Okay.
it's the last thing I see.
Every day?
Every day. And Vashti has always been my favorite character of all the characters because she stands up for what she believes in, regardless of consequences.
It was a mashup.
It just merged.
Mashup.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Cool. So we did that, and one of the things that Purim's about is this silliness. Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of fun. And if you haven't, go look at our Purim videos. You can find them at Cincinnati OJC. And even if I know Purim's over, you can read about in the Purim Guide about the holiday and we write about silliness. You and I had talked about this, and I began to think about it. It struck me that it's more than coincidental that this secular holiday has a very similar undertone or overtone, if you will, as Purim does. Mm-hmm. Right? They're both about silliness, dressing up,
pretending things are not what they seem to be.
Right.
You keeping things hidden, masks. With the Oreo trick you just described, the trick is that the Oreo looks exactly the way you expect it to.
Right. Yeah, if it didn't, it wouldn't be a trick.
Yeah, it wouldn't be funny.
It wouldn't be funny.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about it, going, well, is there a relationship between all of this stuff? Because there's also Carnival, there's also
Mardi Gras.
Thank you. I was going there. That was throwing. Thank you. Sign language. It was throwing beads.
Yeah.
Mardi Gras. So these other holidays that they all have a similar undertone: goofiness, silliness. The commoner becoming the king, isn't there? In Mardi Gras.
The like king of the festival or something.
Right, the king of the festival. There's the idea of. So we were talking about
All Fool's Day.
All Fool's Day too.
In medieval Europe, they used to have I think it was the end of the Christmas celebration, when a different person, they'd have something special that you would eat, and whoever found the pea or the ring or whatever it was would be king for the day and would have people do crazy tricks on everyone else and be as silly as possible.
Right. And it's interesting because Mordecai effectively becomes king for a day. Right?
He dresses in the king's garments. He has a parade on the king's horse. Yeah.
Right, so these elements seem to be in a lot of places. So I have to say, it's not coincidental. There's somehow there's some cultural pieces that probably are much earlier that sort of then get brought into these holidays and then reworked to fit the religion of the current holiday. They couldn't say we're remnants of some pagan holiday. And my sense is there's when you read about it and you can go do and here they are. I did web searches on April Fools, and nobody really knows. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that Gregory the 13th, Pope Gregory, we went from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar in 1582. Now, what was interesting about the Julian calendar, its new year was April 1st. Now, when you think about it, Passover, right, is in the month of Nisan, which is the
first of the year.
First of the year. So people get confused by Judaism when we celebrate Rosh Hashanah because we celebrate Rosh Hashanah, the new year, in the 7th month of the year. Passover actually begins the year. So you begin to go, well, if April 1st was this sort of spring makes a lot of sense. Actually, I don't know why Gregory moved it to January 1, but spring makes a lot more sense from a, what would you call it? A feel. You know, winter's over, spring is sprung, the grass is riz, right? Kind of thing.
Well, the calendar is also something incredibly political. So a few hundred years later, you also have the Catholic Church ends up with a different calendar than the Church of England. And so half of Europe is operating like 10 days, 2 weeks apart from each other. So part of this is also about power. And if there's a tradition that you can't get rid of, but you don't want your power to be threatened, it makes a lot more sense just to lift up those elements. And, you know, like the Humintaschen, a lot of people say they look like vaginas for spring fertility, which makes a lot more sense than Haman's ears. I've never seen ears that look like a triangle. So
some old boxers.
Who knows?
And that's actually, I mean, there's a whole tradition about that because they're now that they're filled with chocolate and all kinds of, but they used to be filled with poppy seeds. And then you begin to go, oh, this is what this was about. It was a spring fertility rite Purim, and that beginning the new year in spring made sense. And then the question became, and that whole thing about the calendar being power, there's some I think in China, the emperors every new emperor created his new calendar because there is power in it. But what was interesting is this piece of how the foolishness gets then drawn into this idea of either seasonal change, or some people said with April Fools, because what happened was once they switched the calendars, that obviously in the ancient world, it wasn't like they had a TV that they got to say, okay, we've just changed calendars, everybody. January 1 is now New Year's Day, and April 1st is no longer. People still celebrated on April 1st, and they were considered fools at the beginning. And this whole struggle, I don't even know, it wasn't until relatively late into the 1800s, I believe, that the world was on the same calendar. We tend to think of this as fairly normative stuff, but it wasn't normative for a very long time, and even time zones and things. And some countries will still fiddle with their time zones for political reasons,
or daylight savings or things like that. Yeah.
So this idea of silliness at seasonal change. We were talking about why would that occur between winter and spring? And I liked your idea.
Well, so to me, it makes sense that when you have a small community and you can't go anywhere, like in the middle of winter, it's cold outside, you really can't be free with people in the same ways because there are consequences. I don't really want to get in an argument with you if I have to see you tomorrow and the next day and the day after. But in spring, there's some more leeway and things are getting warmer. You can go out and just be sillier. And there seems to be a social cycle often to seasons. You know, the fall has its own feel, a craziness in terms of school, and then winter, everyone kind of hunkers down, and then spring, people go out and start dating everyone.
And then you wonder if the silliness gets tied to it in part too, because we're so less tied to the seasons than our ancestors were. It doesn't, we don't really. We want it to rain so that there's not drought and things, but the reality is, we go to the grocery store for our food. Other than right in the States, we're having a little bit of water problems, but it's still being managed. But our food isn't tied to the seasons really anymore. It's tied to sort of transportation. I'm wondering if the stress of worry of winter.
Yeah, you might not make it through the winter.
Yeah. And then and you're not certain that spring always arrives because for us we have we understand the cycle of the seasons, but the ancients didn't have nearly the kind of certainty to it. I wonder.
Or even if you did a month, if it gets warm at the beginning of March or the end of March, and you have had to save all your food for the entire winter, that could be the difference between life and death. You can't survive for a month without food.
Right.
So I think that uncertainty, and with silliness, it allows you to say the things that you couldn't say otherwise. So it can also provides a powerful social commentary.
Right.
And
right.
in that spirit of recreation, what kind of society do we want to live in? What do I want my community to look like? Maybe I can't just say it. I have to play active first.
And it's interesting too, because given that though there are still there are monarchies that still exist, the role of the monarchy is so much more diminished, and that idea of the commodore becoming the king was really significant. That sense of inverting roles or gender crossing or all the things that sort of they gave a place for silliness and craziness to happen, but it was contained.
And yet, when on our Purim carnival, when you dressed up as Tinkerbell, all of the kids, it was different you dressing up as Tinkerbell than someone else. It wouldn't have been as funny if I did it because I'm a woman, but also even if I was a man, it would not have been nearly as funny because you're the senior rabbi, you're the founder, you're Rabbi Barr. And so I think that also plays into things.
Right, because I think, the sense of, I'm mostly in a suit and a tie here. The kids know me that way. They rarely...
But it shows that you're human in a different way.
Oh, no, that was a mistake then.
No, but I think that's part of what silliness does. It puts us on, it equalizes things.
Right. It's interesting, too, what I came across, too, is, court jesters were silly, but they were the wise people, because they were supposed to use humor to try to reshape a situation.
The prophets.
Like the prophets in many ways. It's an interest, and I began to read that. That's like social commentary today. Some of us in the States, certainly, where we're crazy politics right now, it is the comedians, the social commentators who are comedians who are having a bigger impact on the conversation and exposing some of the stuff than the serious people who seem to be so caught up in it.
Yeah, and in our Mensch Quest, we talked with the...
So explain what that was.
With the 4th through 7th graders, we had a quest of Menschness, discovering what does it mean to be a Mensch? What does it mean to be a good person? Because lots of different values go into it and different actions, and yet we all have to have our own hierarchy. And so as part of it, each person created their own coat of arms, and then we shared different values that were on coats of arms. And it was really interesting because one of the values that came up was humor. And it had not occurred to me as one of the values.
Oh, really?
Except it makes a big difference. And we had a little argument about it in the class. And everyone decided that humor definitely deserved to be there because of all of the good things it does for the world. And because it makes people feel better, it makes them feel loved, it can make people accepted, it changes their emotions. And I think sometimes we discount just silliness. Oh, that's just silly, but...
No, I think humor, that's interesting.
Makes a
I didn't realize it because I'm convinced, I think what humor allows us to do, it can diffuse a situation done well. It's a very Jewish... quality. I mean, one of the analysis of why Jews were funny was they can't chase you when they're laughing at you, right? They can't beat you up when they're laughing. That was a whole theory behind it.
Fair.
The other thing it does too is I think in the midst of darkness, if you will, it allows us to remember that there's light. In the midst of a strain, it gives us a chance to know that there's another window we can look out of. It really is about perspective changing. That's a good comedian leads us to a place, and then they turn it, and we see that same event differently all of a sudden. So it is about coping. So if you think of it that way, Purim is or April Fool's Day is about coping. I'm curious if you're watching right now, or you're watching later. Type in if anyone played an April Fool's joke on you. I'm just curious. I
actually, now that I think of it, the one that I fell for was a news one. And it was when I was in college during one of the elections. And it was saying that Obama had won and that gay marriage was legal and all of these things. Of course, now gay marriage is legal, so that's exciting. But I remember it was the whole front page, and I was so excited, and then it wasn't real.
That's interesting. That's funny. Yeah, I think.
But no one did it to me. That was all on my own.
But that's interesting too, because I think news sources, because that's about power and authority, right? So when it says something, it's you get tricked,
Yeah.
right? I think that is that disruption of who does it. I don't know that that when a powerful person or a powerful entity or a powerful trusted source does it, it has that element to it.
Yeah.
So you can smile, we can laugh, you can enjoy. April Fool's Day is not over yet. Come up with. I was thinking. Here are the other ones. I was reading. Here was once the BBC in 1957. They aired a spot that said spaghetti crops in Switzerland would be doing particularly well this year.
Oh.
And they had a footage of a woman picking strands from a spaghetti tree and laying them out to dry.
It's the original Photoshop.
Right. And then in '75, an Australian TV station announced that the country was going to be changing to a metric time system. So, right? So they'd have milli days, centi days, and deca days, which I thought was sort of cool.
That's pretty smart.
Given in the States, we're still on inches and pounds, and everybody else in the world is on the metric system. That would have been, that we could do.
Yeah.
Obama passed an executive order that it's now the metric system today.
Yes.
So throw away your rulers. So that's great. So we're glad you're here. Smile, laugh, enjoy the rest of April Fool's Day, and remember that being able to see the world and seeing its brightness is a good thing. That there is indeed sadness and darkness, but being able to smile and being able to laugh and to know there's beauty is a wonderful thing. And whether our ancestors did it out of their fear of winter and the arrival of spring and their joy, or whether it was about power or authority, it does still speak to the human spirit, and that we can be and should be joyful. There is wondrous things, and they do abound all around us. So enjoy. And now we're going to turn our attention to the sadder things in life, remembrance and loss.
The cycle of life unfolds. Just as we rejoice in new life, we mourn its final ending, the inevitable death of those whose lives have touched ours. Today, we join voices with others as we say aloud the words which help us to recall those we have lost. We remember the moments we have shared, the laughter and the tears, the beauty and the pain. Inevitably, as our lives intertwined, as we have touched one another, we have been influenced, changed, enriched by their presence. And so, as we mourn their loss, we celebrate their life. Thus the cycle continues, their lives forever marking the continued unfolding of our own. We pause at this time to reflect upon those who are no longer among us. This moment of remembrance links life to life, generation to generation.
And we remember tonight Joseph Stoller, Lita C. Nolan, Avram ben Moshe Halevi, Elisheva bat Avraham. And if you have names of those that you hold in your heart this night and at this time, feel free to type them and share them with the community. We also think of those who died as a result of violence. Think of those who died as a result of terrorism. Terrorism that mars our world and destroys lives and transforms society. We think of those who have died defending the principles of justice and of peace and democracy. We think about those who've died as a result of neglect, genocide, poverty. We think about those who have no one to recall their names this night. We think about all our loved ones who no longer walk among us. In b'dei hamavet hakoach la'akor ma shetumun b'lev. Death cannot take that which is locked in our hearts. With our tears and our sorrow, we remember. With our courage and our strength, we do not forget. Acts of kindness, deeds of courage will remain. Beauty created, wisdom shared, is not lost. With our tears and our sorrow, we remember. Im dama'ot be'einenu, be'et evlenu, mishmor al zechar achuvenu. With our tears in our sorrow, we remember.
Let the Sabbath be a time for believing in what could be and seeing with new eyes. In this serious world, let us take ourselves less seriously. In these harsh times, let us listen for a soothing word. While the world around us unfolds in an instant, let us judge each other a little more slowly. Let the Sabbath shine a light into a corner of ourselves where hope is renewed. Let us remember a reason to be joyful, a way to be gentle. Let the Sabbath be a time for opening up. Let us find strength in our dreams and trust in our strength.
Want to do the challah reading? I'll do the wine.
Sure. In Jewish tradition, we share the challah as we celebrate the Sabbath. We are reminded that challah, a twisted loaf of bread, sustains and nurtures the life of our bodies. May the sharing of this challah sustain and nurture our hunger for knowledge and understanding of the world around us. May the sharing of this challah sustain and nurture our connection to those close by and those separated by distance and by time. May the sharing of this challah encourage us to reach out to those across our rooms, across our hallways, to those across our desks and across our miles. May the sharing of the challah strengthen and enrich our coming week. Baruch Amal Kapenu, blessed is the work of our hands. Baruch Ha'azon Ha'adam, blessed is the vision of our minds. Baruch Lechem Ha'aretz, blessed is the bread of the earth.
Great. If any have some juice or some wine, feel free to join me. On Shabbat, it's our custom to share wine or juice with family, friends, and community. It reminds us that it's not enough for us to quench our physical thirst. We must nourish our spirit as well. As we celebrate Shabbat, may this cup of wine remind us to live our lives to the fullest and embrace the joys and pleasures that life offers. Bruchim ha'chayim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Bruchim ha'chayim ba'adam, blessed is the life within each person. So we say, L'chaim.
L'chaim.
To life. So it's been sitting around. I did you a favor. It was wine that was opened like 2 weeks ago from the...
Yum, yum, yum.
Ooh, ooh. Okay. Ooh. So we got some announcements. New on our Cincinnati OJC site, if you go to cincinnatiojc.org, cincinnatiojc.org, there is an interview with Daniel Hope. I urge you to go see it. Daniel Hope is a remarkable man. He spoke at Congregation Beth Adam, but more than speak, he is a virtuoso violinist. He is one of the most prolific violinists in the world, classical musicians in the world, with 25 albums to his name.
Wow.
He was in Cincinnati as part of a chamber concert series that we host. We're one of the two institutions. It's a 2-night series where we host one night, and there's a church in Cincinnati proper that hosts it the first night. He played music from the Holocaust, music that was lost during the Holocaust, written by musicians in Terezin, by musicians who were silenced. And you can go, if you do a search, if you type in Daniel Hope, violinist, his website will come up with lots of information. He made a documentary called Refuge in Music, which is about the music of Terezin with some musicians from there. And he does a short video with us talking about it and how he got into this, and also then how he began his own personal journey of discovery and found out that he had Jewish grandparents on one side. Fascinating guy, incredible violinist. I urge you, type in Daniel Hope and type Spheres in. It has become my favorite piece of music. I just love it. And we have this video, I have a video with him. I had a chance to meet him. Really a nice gentleman, very interesting. So take a look at that. Of course, when you're on the CincinnatiOJC.org page, you can look at the other interviews we had. If you haven't looked at the interview with Rabbi Rami Shapiro and some of the blogs, people responded to them. You responded to. You can read Aya's response to Rabbi Shapiro. We have an active and engaging dialogue here. There are responses to all these folks. Take a look at that. There's one with Vic Strecker, some of the other interviews. You know, always go look at the Purim if you haven't seen it as well. Remember, Passover is quickly coming. April 22nd is a Friday night. We're going to do our Friday night service that night at about 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock. The next night can't remember exactly what time it will be on online Seder. I think it's at 5, but I have to double check. It's going to be a little bit different than last year. It's going to be a little bit more educational. We're going to make it more of a model Seder. We'll do the Seder, but we're going to do a lot more conversation. I just was able to work at a church again and do that. And I really like that sort of back and forth. So we're going to do that. So we'll be getting more information. Next week is April 8th.
But you have to. But if you haven't bought your Haggadahs yet,
thank you.
Now it's time to buy them.
Right. So go to Cincinnati or go to jewishcommunity.org. Go to the shop, and you can go to shop and you can buy Haggadahs. We have a great Haggadah. It's really very manageable. While you can skip some pages, you don't need to. You can read the whole thing. It's in English. And it deals with, just like everything else we deal with, honestly, it recognizes the evolutionary nature of the holiday. It recognizes that much of what we're reading is really mythology and incorporates that into it. It's a good Haggadah. I'm very proud of it. Go to ourjewishcommunity.org. Go to the shop, and even if you go to the Cincinnati OJC, there's a tab that says shop. Go there. You can buy that. Thank you. Good work. And always, if you're going to Amazon, go through our websites. Go to ourjewishcommunity.org, click on the Amazon, and then go buy, because we get a little percentage of it. Very little, but it really is, every dollar really does help make an institution like this run. Next week is April 8th. I'm pretty good at that. April 1st, April 8th. I understand the calendar. Proud of that, too. Marcy Miller, who is the executive director of the Hillel at Miami University. Yes, there are 2 Miami universities. There's the University of Miami in Florida, but there's Miami University, which is in Oxford, Ohio. Understand that Miami was a university before Florida was a state.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a T-shirt. That's how I remember that.
That is a great T-shirt.
Right? So we're going to talk about, because they're partnering, the Hillel, both actually, the Hillel in Cincinnati and the Hillel in Oxford, are partnering with us because we're bringing in a fellow named Bart Campolo, who is a chaplain at University of Southern California. He began as an evangelical minister and now is a humanist chaplain. So we're partnering. So next week with Marcy, we're going to talk about life on campus, issues around Jewish students on campus, what she sees going on. So join us. We have a lot happening. Interviews, Passover, services, blogs, you name it, ourjewishcommunity.org. We got it. You also listen to I got some podcasts up too. If you haven't listened to them in a while, go listen to my podcast. And if you haven't, go to iTunes and give them a thumbs up or a 5, because it always makes me feel good when I see that. So you can help me help everybody, because we're a community working together. And we're going to close with our final words. May we know blessings those who are near, and may we know blessings those who are far. And may the Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.